Turkey is approaching a general election on June 7th, but the country, one of the Mint's up-and-coming economic giants, has been hit by neighbouring tensions and lessening investments. Joining me down the line is Aaron Stein, doctoral fellow of the Geneva Center for Security Policy, on where the economy stands as it goes to the polls. Aaron, it's said that many emerging economies are slowing, so has Turkey run out of steam?
I think it's just endemic of what's going on in the broader emerging economies. It's that the access to liquidity is slowing down, investors are getting a little bit nervous and pulling their money out, and Turkey is no exception. This has been exacerbated by the recent tensions, starting first with Gezi Park, and then the December 17th, and then December 25th corruption allegations of the government, and then now with the war against ISIS, both in Syria and Iraq, have certainly raised questions about sort of the safety of Turkey and whether or not it's the proper place to invest.
How business-friendly is the current leadership?
Current leadership is actively looking to keep money in the country. I think, as all the viewers know, the country is dependent on these sort of hot money inflows to finance its large current account deficit, and the economic technocratic team is very much aware of that and has recently gone and approached New York and is often in London trying to keep this capital in country and to attract more capital. I think the concern amongst investors is that the unstable political climate is leading to the sidelining of these important technocrats in favor of more, let's say, Erdogan-style economic advisors who have rather unorthodox views about how best to govern the country economically.
And would you say corruption hindered the country's development?
It hindered the country's development in that it created a toxic political atmosphere that created an us versus them mindset within Turkey, which allowed for sort of the empowerment of sort of the unorthodox economic team that Erdogan is starting to put around him, which is raising questions about the future of the country after the election on June 7th.
So as Turkey heads to the polls, who are the main contenders and where do they stand economically?
The main party, and the party that will win the election, probably between 40 and 45%, is the ruling Justice and Development Party. It's actually headed by Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, but is really headed by the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. There's the main opposition, the People's Republic Party, the CHP, which is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the MHP, the far-right nationalists, and probably the most important political party in this election is the HDP, the People's Democratic Party, which is one of the co-chairs, the Selahattin Demirtas. All the parties have expressed basically a similar platform to what the AKP had put forward between 2002 and let's say 2013, open to the world economy, trying to attract investment. One of the surprises of this election is that the AKP has been put on the back foot about its handling of the economy recently.
When the Justice and Development Party, known as the AKP, came to power in 2002, the focus was on closer ties politically and economically with Europe. There were even calls by an EU commissioner in 2013 for Turkey to adopt the euro if it joined the EU. Where does the country stand now with Europe?
I mean, the European accession process has really slowed down, and I think that goes to both sides. Turkey is not moving as fast as it could be with some of the reforms that need to be to hasten its integration with the European Union. And some of the major European Union powers, Germany, France, even Cyprus, are actively blocking the opening of certain chapters. And this has been feeding into the domestic political narrative in Turkey. And now the EU is very much used as a wedge issue by populist politicians, that the EU doesn't want us, it's a Christian club, maybe Turkey is better off on its own.
And following the election, how do you see this relationship developing?
I see more of the same. I mean, enthusiasm for the EU and Turkey is dwindling. If there's movement forward, I think what you'll see is actually a visa-free travel for Turks, but it will all come down to the Cyprus issue. There is talk of movement on Cyprus, but if the country continues to tack to the nationalist right, any sort of concessions on Cyprus will be very difficult to implement.
Turkey was, of course, and still is, of interest to the EU due to its proximity to Asia and the fact it's predominantly Muslim. How could Europe really benefit from Turkey and vice versa?
The opportunity for greater trade ties are there. I mean, you already have the customs union that's in place. But politically, I think the European Union has tremendous incentive to continue to reach out to Turkey. They have an opportunity to not only play a vital role or an important role in shaping Turkey's democratic future through soft power, through the need to adopt European norms, but also to keep Turkey basically in the North Atlantic sphere. And that's something that will very much be in play after the election.
And looking more internationally now, and Turkey, along with India, Brazil, Indonesia and South Africa, is part of the Fragile Five, so-called because of their weak growth, high inflation and current account deficits. How will the expected US Federal Reserve interest rate rise affect the country?
You're already seeing signs of this. People are pulling their money out of Turkey with the expected interest rate rise in the Federal Reserve. So all of a sudden, that weakness with the current account deficit is coming more and more into play. Now, Turkey has been able to offset that a little bit with decreased global energy prices. But a lot of investors and a lot of economic watchers have been concerned that the actual numbers, the current account deficit, has not decreased as much as it should have, and has been offset by gold exports to Switzerland, mysterious inflows that are recorded as net omissions and errors. So nobody quite knows where this money is coming from. And I think what you're going to see is more concerns about how the current account deficit is going to be financed and whether or not the Turkish economy is healthy and on the proper footing.
So finally, moving forwards, what opportunities does Turkey have?
After the election, making no assumptions about what actually is going to happen, the country has an incentive to once again begin to govern itself. The country has been in a political election cycle now going on for at least 2.5 years, if not a little bit longer. And a lot of issues are being swept aside in the name of political expediency. And so you're seeing a slowdown on the reforms that need to happen to push Turkey forward, to remain that attractive place for investors. And the concern is that if the AKP wins this election, and by that it gets more than 330 seats in the parliament, Turkey will enter another election cycle in that Erdogan and the AKP will have to go out and campaign for a national referendum for the constitution it will try to pass.